Bedbug Bootcamp webinar. My name is Courtney Allison, and I'm the Southeast Regional Coordinator from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I'll be the host and question moderator today. Our presenter this morning is Christine Sterle, Director from the Thorntown Public Library. I'd like to start off the webinar with a few announcements. This webinar is provided as a part of the Library Trends and Hot Topics series. To register for other webinars available for this theme or other trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current in-person training menu, please see our continuing education website. The Indiana State Library has many ways we try to stay connected to library staff across the state. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word. We also offer a blog which provides information about the Indiana State Collection, interview spotlights on library staff from across the state, and information about upcoming events at the State Library. If you have a question, just type it in the chat box on the upper left side of the screen. I'll be watching and we'll get your question to Christine as soon as there's a good opportunity. There should also be time near the end for questions. This session is 1 hour, so you'll get 1 LEU for today. At the end of the presentation, I will put up a link so you can download your LEU. So please stay signed in to the end of the presentation to get your LEU. I'm also going to put a survey link in the chat box. Please take that, and that will just let us know how we're doing. If at any point during the webinar you experience any sound issues, please see the sound issues box just below the chat box on the left side of the screen. If there's a global sound issue, we will announce it in the chat pod. If you are unable to resolve the sound issues you are experiencing, we are recording this meeting and you can watch it after the meeting has ended. Again, if there is a global sound issue, we will make an announcement in the chat box. Without further ado, I will now turn the presentation over to Christine.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me this morning as we talk about this hot topic in libraries. An unfortunate hot topic, but one that needs to be addressed. As Courtney said, I'm Christine Sterle. I'm the director at the Thorntown Public Library in Thorntown, Indiana. We're in northwestern Boone County, about halfway between Indianapolis and Lafayette. We have a service population of around 5,000 people and a 14,000 square foot building. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're dealing with. I also want to tell you I'm not an expert in bed bugs, but I have learned from a lot of experts through the last few years. To begin with, bed bugs have been found in all 50 US states, so they are a nationwide problem, unfortunately. ORCIN each year releases a list of cities with the most bed bugs, and this is the most current information as of January 3rd, 2017. Baltimore, Maryland is now #1 on the list. It's displaced Chicago, which was #1 for the last couple of years. And you can see that Indianapolis is number 14 on this year's list. We've actually gone up a place since last year. We were 15th, and the first time we gave this presentation, we were 11th. That means that Indianapolis has bed bug situations, obviously, and since we're in Indiana, there's a lot of travel. We do a lot of business in Indianapolis, so it's something for all of the surrounding counties and communities to be aware of. Bedbugs have been a staple of American life since the Mayflower. In 1926, infestations in hotels and apartments were so common that experts couldn't recall a time when they weren't a problem. But in 1939, a Swiss chemist named Paul Hermann Müller discovered the pesticide DDT, which proved staggeringly effective at killing insects. For decades thereafter, DDT and other chemical pesticides helped keep America's homes and hotels bedbug-free. The use of DDT and other effective pesticides were banned in the 1980s. The bedbugs started gaining momentum, and since 2000, a new strain of pesticide-resistant bedbugs has been popping up all around the nation. Why are they back? One theory is that pockets of resistant bedbugs evolved somewhere in the world, probably in more than one place. In the 80s and 90s, there was a huge increase in travel, both domestically and internationally, after flying got cheaper. That probably helped spread these resistant bedbugs. Also, they are hard to see. They're cryptic insects, and they hide during the day. They're not necessarily nocturnal, but they do go into hiding, which makes it hard to find them. They're not invisible, but they're hard to detect with the human eye. They also spread easily in cities. Bedbugs love apartments because of the shared walls. It's easy for them to move from place to place. To get rid of them, you have to work with other people, sharing a living space, and if you treat one unit, they may move next door while you're being treated, so they can be very difficult to get rid of in larger cities. People suffering from bedbug infestations often report embarrassment and shame. They're afraid to have guests in their house or to visit their family and friends, can't sleep, have nightmares, poor performance at work, emotional and or mental anguish. There's the itching and the scars that come along with the bites, and secondary infections resulting from the bites can arise. To me, though, the biggest barrier for treatment is the embarrassment and the shame. People equate bedbug infestation with unsanitary living conditions. It's kind of like being the kid to have lice in elementary school. There's that assumption that's made when really they're just opportunistic pests. And people who are ashamed of the problem may not want to share that they have a problem or seek treatment, and that causes the problem to grow. Having bedbugs is a life-altering experience. So what is it we're looking for? Bedbugs, they're small. They have oval-shaped bodies, 6 legs, and 2 antennae. The adult bedbugs are about the size of an apple seed, so these are by no means invisible to the naked eye. The eggs, however, are very hard to see. They're only about the size of a speck of dust. Now, this picture is a very, very blown up picture of some bedbug eggs. And that dark spot at the bottom of your screen is actually the impression of a pencil lead. So that gives you an idea of how small these bedbugs are. They're more visible on dark backgrounds or smooth surfaces, and females have a tendency to lay eggs around their harborage areas. A cluster of eggs is pretty good indication that there is a fertilized female nearby. Frequently, she will be hiding in a crevice just out of sight. Now, these next few slides are pictures from my personal collection. I should say the library's collection of bedbugs. These are ones that have been collected over the past few years during different situations, and they are all dead. That one is one I took out of the bag so you could get a little better view of him without the glare, but it's still a kind of fuzzy picture. But I put some coins in there so you get an idea of what size you're looking at. That one's kind of a medium-sized bedbug, I would say. This next one is very small, very hard to see. You'll notice it's a little bit paler. This one is not a fully developed adult. When the bedbugs are nymphs or in their earlier stages, they're almost transparent and definitely a lighter color.
Someone says it looks squashed.
It is not squashed. It may have been, I can't remember where I got this one. This one may have been heat treated, and once you put things through the heating process, they shrink up a little bit, so I think that may be why he looks a little shriveled. I say he, I don't know. This photo is, again, blurry, but this is the exoskeleton from the bedbug that you saw in the previous slide. So I take that back. I don't think I heat treated one. I think this one lived in captivity until dying from natural causes. So it was apparently changing its, it was in the middle of a cycle and molted before it died. Okay, this one you can see is very, very tiny. It was found on my shirt while I was at lunch one day. So I grabbed a tissue and saved it for evidence for presentations such as this. So, and this is it's very, very small. I would say probably in like the second stage of development, if I'm guessing. Not a nymph. They are actually smaller than this when they're born, hatched. This bed bug is about 1/4 of an inch long. And I'll point out the length there. This is one that I do remember it was heat treated, and I decided to save it as a specimen after the fact. If you'll notice the length of the body, normally they're oval shaped. This one's a little longer, which leads me to believe he may have recently fed. Bed bugs, when they feed, instead of getting kind of fat all the way around like ticks do, they get longer. And that is definitely an adult right there. This is another example of a bed bug. This one was, well, they're all bed bugs. This one was actually plucked from the sleeve of a patron who was visiting the library. One of my staff found it, and she grabbed it with a tissue and brought it to me, and we put it in a bag. This one kind of has an interesting story. I left it in the bag in my office with the tissue and everything, and I didn't heat treat it. I was curious to see how long it would live without a blood meal. So I left it to its own devices. The bed bug is in the bottom left of the screen, and the top right is fecal matter. So I would check on this bed bug about once a week to see if it was still alive, and it lived for about 2 months before it perished. The interesting part, though, is in this slide, because after it died, I was looking at the bag again, and I noticed all of these nymphs. So apparently when we got a hold of this bed bug, it may have been carrying an egg sac. I'm not certain, but those nymphs were all born in captivity and then subsequently died because they didn't have a blood meal. That's just a few of them. I think there were probably 10 altogether in the bag. They're very, very tiny. And frankly, I don't know how long they were in there before I finally noticed them. So this is a diagram that shows you a little bit about the bedbug life cycle. In looking through my slides yesterday, I thought, I think I almost have a complete set of the bedbug life cycle. If it's not complete, I'm fine leaving it the way it is. The eggs are about 1 millimeter. As you can see, those first instar bedbugs are very, very tiny. The one that I found on my shirt looks like it may have been a 3rd instar bedbug, and then they grow in size. And you can see the difference in the unfed and the recently fed. The length of the body changes. Okay. The bedbugs grow by molting during each stage, and they leave behind a cast skin. The juveniles are smaller, and they're lighter colored versions of themselves. They all have horizontal stripes across their body, and the eggs are grayish white and laid singly or in small clusters within their hiding spots. So just a little bit more about what they're like. All right. This next slide has a video, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. What you're looking at is a vial of bed bugs. This is one that our bedbug dog team keeps with her as part of the training for her dog. She has to keep live bed bugs so that Liza is aware of the scent, and she'll perform hides sometimes with this vial so that Liza can, so we can make sure she's working and not just stargazing and being a dog while she's at the library. Live bed bugs may be crawling around their home, or they could be sitting quietly in a crack or a crevice. Newly hatched bed bugs are beige and difficult to see. As you can see, there are some little tiny beige ones in there, and there are a few larger ones. And then as they mature, they become darker and easier to see. The dead bed bugs are frequently found in or near their home, and often with their legs broken off. This image shows some cast skins of bed bugs that they cast between their growth stages. They look like the empty shells of bed bugs, and they're very light. They'll blow away very easily. This is the type of thing that I found when I found our bed bug problem. This is what alerted me to the situation, was finding some of these skins on the top of some books. This is an example of fecal stains and droppings. They'll appear as small dark or black spots, or they could be solid, or ink-like stains. There's also a few bed bugs in that picture too. One way, if you're at a hotel or if you see on fabric some dark spots that you think might be bed bug feces, is you could wet the fabric, and if it turns a reddish brown, that's blood. That's what bed bug fecal matter is. So that's one way to tell that you may be dealing with bed bug problems. And then this is a photo of some bed bug bites. As far as how bed bug bites manifest in humans, it's kind of all over the map. The symptoms are usually mild when they're present, but there are some people who don't react to bed bug bites at all, which is the scary part. It would be nice if we all just, could tell exactly what was going on. They can occur on any exposed part of the body. The face, neck, and arms are the most commonly affected areas. The signs and symptoms can appear from minutes to days. Nan, who is our bedbug dog handler, doesn't react to bed bugs, so her skin doesn't show when she's been bitten. There's a librarian in Indiana who volunteered because she was curious to see if she was a reactor, and Nan's vial of bed bugs fed off of her arm, a spot on her arm, and nothing happened for 11 days. And after 11 days, she saw where the bugs had bitten and it turned into welts and there was a little bit of itching, but it took a long time for those to show up. So evidence of bites isn't necessarily an indication of bed bugs, and absence isn't an indication that you don't have a problem. So the good news is the bed bugs don't typically pose serious health risks. They are not known to carry disease. In recent research, investigators reviewed 53 studies on bed bugs and their effects, and that's where they found that there's little evidence of disease carrying. The bad news, as I said, not all people react to bed bug bites, so it's possible to have a problem without realizing it. The other thing that makes them difficult to treat is that they do not groom one another, where if you're dealing with cockroaches, you can poison a few of them and they take the chemical back to the nest, and then they groom everybody else and you can wipe them all out. Bed bugs don't do this, so you have to treat pretty much each one individually. Also, they can live several months without feeding. But there's good news. They don't jump, which is reassuring, honestly. They don't fly. And the other thing we know is they can't shoot through plastic, so you can always bag them up when you find them. Here's some common myths about bed bugs. I'll run through them pretty quickly. Myth number 1 is that they can jump and fly. We just established that they cannot. Compared with other insects, bed bugs are actually pretty slow to reproduce. Each adult female produces about 1 egg per day, where a housefly lays 500 eggs over 3 to 4 days. So that gives you a little perspective. Myth number 3, bed bugs can typically live a year without a meal. It's more like a few months in good conditions. Well, for them, they could potentially live up to a year, but that's usually in colder conditions when their metabolism slows down. Myth 4 is that they bite only at night. They tend to come out at night because that's when people are at rest. That's when they're attracted to you, but they will come out anytime that there is a meal. One example is if you have a bed bug problem at home and you leave your home for a week on vacation, you come back, they haven't fed, they're gonna come out at any opportunity for a meal. Myth 5 is that they live exclusively in mattresses. Again, they live where people are at rest. So that includes your sofa, the lazy boy, the seats at the theater, the public transportation, where people are sitting for any amount of time is where they will congregate. Myth 6, that they prefer unsanitary urban conditions. They like the shared walls, but other than that, they're opportunistic. They will go anywhere where there is a meal. Myth 7, they travel on our bodies. Actually, they're more likely to travel on our belongings in purses or bags or on shoes. They don't like our body heat, and they don't like to travel close to our skin. Myth 8 is that they transmit disease. We just talked about that. There's no evidence for that. Myth 9 is that we should bring back DDT, and research shows that these bed bugs that we're dealing with now are actually very pesticide resistant, so the chances of DDT working on these strains of bed bugs is very unlikely. Myth 10 is you can spray bed bugs away. There are chemical treatments that are somewhat effective, but the most effective treatment is heat. This is my library. I found the first bed bug in our library on March 3rd, 2014. I was actually shelving some mysteries and looked down, and I could see the castings of some bed bugs on the top of the books. And of course, I very quietly grabbed the book and I ran to my office and started Googling, and it was exactly what I suspected. That's just a cartoon for your lighten the mood. Here's some common bedbug hiding spots, and most of them are furniture in your home. The box spring is a very popular place, the frame or the headboard, baseboard areas, couch and chair. Some things that aren't listed on this pie chart, but that I've learned from pest control companies. They also will be found behind loose wallpaper, under lamps on desks and tables, in and around the edges of carpeting, beneath loose flooring, behind or under cables and pipes, behind mirrors and picture frames. Basically anywhere they can weasel in is where they will hide. Now, places like behind your wallpaper and under your lamps and tables and things, those are evidence of a pretty serious issue, because they're going to default to the things like the bed and the sofa and the nightstand.
And someone in the chat says in and behind electrical outlets.
Yes, that is another place where they can be found. We actually had Nan and Liza alerted on one of our floor outlets at the library once, and so there was a powder that they could put down in the outlet to take care of bed bugs there.
Nicole says Google has scarred me for life.
It's bad. Here's a few pictures of pest evidence in books. One thing that I wish I had done when we first found that we had some bed bugs in different books in the collection and some returns was to take more photos before I kind of heat treated and pitched things that couldn't be saved. These were images from the internet, I believe, but what you're looking at is some examples of fecal matter on the tops of the books. When you inspect books for pests, you want to start by opening the front and the back covers. Look under the book jacket. They love to climb under book jackets. And look wherever the spine may have separated from the book, because yes, they can fit into a lot of cracks and crevices, but they do need space. So look at where the book falls open naturally when you open it. That's where you're going to be most likely to find the pests. Here's another image of some damage in books. Looks like some fecal matter. The other thing is, don't overlook your audiobooks and your DVDs. Those are also very accommodating when there's a bed bug that needs a place to stay. We've found one on an audiobook because we had a patron who thought audiobooks would be better than using books if they had an issue, and so that didn't really quite work. So once you find them, what do? You panic internally for just a moment, and then then you need to inform the staff. In small groups or in a staff meeting, the sooner the better, but you want them to know right away what we're dealing with. Share pictures of bed bugs and bed bug damage so they know what to look for. Even show them the materials that were affected so they can see, firsthand what's happening. Remind them that the bugs don't jump or fly. And also discuss preventative personal habits. Don't store personal belongings on the floor. Don't clutter your workspace. Don't handle or carry books close to your body. This is very much a do as I say, not as I do, because I'm picturing my desk right now. And it's hard to avoid these situations, but it's something, especially if you know there's a situation, these are things you can do to protect yourself. And remember that your circulation staff is your first line of defense against further outbreaks. You want to have an immediate response procedure. At my library, we have Ziploc bags at our circulation desks and a designated holding area, which I will tell you is a wastebasket beneath each desk so that we can put the book away somewhere and then take that container elsewhere to look at what we may or may not have. You also want to inform your patrons how to properly return items with bed bugs, especially, if someone returns something and you suspect a problem in their home, you don't want them putting things in your book drop. You also don't want them unbagging things and putting them on the counter necessarily. So you want to know what you're dealing with when they're being returned. And once the materials are safely bagged to contain the pests, we cook them. The Zapbug heater that's pictured in this slide is actually a Zapbug oven 2. They're available for $349 on Amazon. And as you can see, it's large enough to hold a chair. The one that we have at my library is the original Zapbug. It's $199, and we load that full of books and other materials. We also found we could stick the piano bench in there, and blankets, throw pillows, other things will fit in that Zapbug. The oven raises the temperature to between 120 and 155 degrees, which will kill all bed bugs, and it's safe for most belongings. I don't use the thermostat and the timer anymore at my library. What we do is we'll load the oven in the morning, plug it in, and just let it run for 8 to 10 hours and unplug it. Bed bugs can be identified by their strong smell. The smell is caused by the oil the bugs emit, and it's been described in various ways. Most commonly, however, the smell has been described as being similar to cilantro, coriander, and various nuts, including almonds. So I haven't smelled any of those smells. But because of this scent, we employ the service of Liza, the bedbug sniffing dog. That's not really her. This is Liza. She and her trainer, Nan, work with Alert Canine Bedbug Detection Agency. And the link to their website is at the end of this presentation. Visual inspections are only 20 to 40% accurate at best, so bedbug detection dogs generate a quicker and a more accurate result. The dog eliminates guesswork. A University of Florida study demonstrates that scent detection dogs have a 97% accuracy in detecting even the earliest stages of the bedbug problem. And then here, hopefully it will turn right side up, is a video. This is not my library, but another one that Nan had supplied of the two of them working together. And there's no sound, but you can see what, I don't think there's sound. Shouldn't be sound. She's walking through the stacks and nosing around. Very nonchalant. And in this case, I believe Nan has done a hide. As I had mentioned earlier, if you want to make sure the dog is working or you just want to get her ready to work, Nan will kind of put Liza around the corner from where she is and then hide a vial of the bed bugs somewhere for her to find. Then you see her looking and she sits, and that's how you know she's alerted. And then she gets her ball. So having this inspection done at my library takes around an hour, a little less. We have Nan and Liza come quarterly, and then we also have quarterly pest treatment by our Indiana Pest Control Company. So we'll schedule Nan and Liza to come on a Thursday, and then we'll have Indiana Pest Control come on a Friday evening. And if they found any areas of concern, then they can treat those a little more diligently, but otherwise they just do a general chemical treatment quarterly. The bedbug dog has there's a scent cone that Liza is sensing when she walks around. So if you have things like way up 8 feet off the ground, she won't necessarily smell those, but if it's 5 to 6 feet up, she can usually sense that. And then once Liza alerts in an area, even if we don't find physical evidence of a pest, because we've had this situation before, we go ahead and remove the items and we cook them.
And I'm just going to throw it out there. Someone says there's another brand of oven that they use, Thermal Strike.
Okay.
The Expedition model isn't worth it, but they use the Rangers. So there's
All right.
just some good information there.
Great, thank you. We have cooked books, DVDs, cassette players, piano bench, pillows, anything that will fit in the cooker, we will put it in there. If Liza gives us a vague alert, as I said earlier, we'll pull books if we can, but if she's alerting on carpeting or a table or a wood floor, then we'll spray that area with Sterifab, and then we let the pest control company know that area may need extra attention when they visit.
Someone has a question, are DVDs okay to cook?
We haven't had any issues with DVDs. Sometimes the cases on audiobooks and DVDs will get a little wonky, but the DVD itself and the CDs have survived the heat treatments we've done.
Oh, and someone else said they have done it and they are
fine. Okay. This is an image of some items that you should have in your bedbug kit. Gloves, of course, because no one wants to handle these things with their bare hands. Sterifab, which is pictured in the bottom right. That's a chemical spray. That's also a disinfectant, and we have a couple of squirt bottles we keep on each floor, but we have a gallon that we can use to refill. That's something that we'll spray on the furniture just for peace of mind if there's been an issue. It's a quick kill, and it'll makes the area not habitable for the bed bugs. They don't like it there. Ziploc bags we keep at the desks. 1 gallon is good. 2 gallon is even better for some of your large hardcover books. Nuvan Pro Strips. These come with little plastic hangers, but you can actually take them out of the hanger, cut them into quarters, and put them in your vacuum cleaner bag, because when you vacuum, you might sweep up pests, and this will help keep them from reproducing and flourishing. Plastic totes, and I have a few that seal on the top. I like those for just quarantining items until I can address them. And then the bedbug heater.
So I have a question, the Nuvan strips, do those kill the bed bugs? So if you vacuum up bed bugs? Okay.
And one thing I do, like when I put potentially affected items in a tote, I will have a Nuvan strip just lying in there in the bottom. It's not guaranteed depending on how long you keep the item in there, but it just makes me feel better, and then I end up cooking it anyway. So now, how you deal with bedbug situation in your community is up to you, and it's up to the situation. You know, it depends on the situation you have in your library. We didn't do a press release or any sort of notice, but if we had a larger, because I was too busy panicking trying to figure out what we were dealing with before I could coherently educate the public on it. But in the future, I may do so now that I know more about the situation and how widely spread bedbug problems can be. Many libraries are affected by bedbugs, as are many facilities, businesses, public buildings, nursing homes, hospitals, theaters, college dorms, hotels, clothing stores, factories. You do need to be prepared, though, to answer the questions. Like, we were doing some heat treating, and I was getting calls from a landlord who wanted to know who we used to kill the bed bugs at the library, and I gave him some references. So you need to have a plan of attack, though, when the time comes. Hopefully it won't come, though. Our pest mitigation plan has a few different parts. The immediate response is to identify the source as best you can, quarantine any items that are affected. I also say run circulation reports, because in our case, we found that there were 2 families we felt were bringing them to us when this happened back in 2014, and I wanted to see what other things may have been on the shelf and pull those things. And you need to address the situation with the card holder. The management response is to confirm that materials have been contained, to assess the damage, to determine if it's actually bedbug damage or something else. If it's manageable in-house, then we quarantine the items and we treat with the heater. If it's more widespread, then we contact our pest control company. Back in March 2014, our first call was actually to Indiana Pest Control to have them confirm that it was a bed bug and kind of talk us down from the ledge about the situation. Because in your head, you've already shut down the library, you've already done all these things, when in fact, yeah, we had a situation, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it was in my mind. And in instances where the source of the pest contamination is determined to be a patron, and this is what I think we're a little soft on, we say the patron will be notified and his or her borrowing privileges will be limited. The library director will educate the patron on pest identification and treatment and will monitor patron materials as they are returned. We did that, and in one case it worked very well. In another one, the people told me everything was under control, and then it wasn't. So I will probably not be as generous if this happens again. We also have our preventative strategy, which is regular cleaning schedule, our periodic canine inspections, which are quarterly, the enforcement of a hygiene policy. So if you see someone with a bug on them, they need to leave. Furnishing selections. We all love the nice upholstered, comfortable stuff, but you look around and you see all the places where you could have issues, and it makes you think. We haven't removed any furniture yet, but there are thoughts moving forward as to when things are ready to replace, you may change the types of furniture you get. Zip-top bags, which we keep at all of the desks, and then centralized treatment. One thing we do for sure at my library is we don't handle anything that may have bed bugs on it on a carpeted area. We take everything to a tile area where we can see what we're dealing with. And then when I talk about upholstered chairs, this is one of the chairs I was sitting in when I found the little tiny bug crawling up my shirt at lunch. These are great hiding places for bed bugs, I will tell you. We ended up having the pest control company bring a box truck, and they hauled all 50 of our meeting room chairs out into the box truck along with a lot of our other meeting room furniture, and they heat treated everything there. We also had them spray down the metal folding chairs because even those could be a place to harbor. So we were very confident once that was done that we had the situation under control, but those chairs are just a great opportunity for something to take hold. A few hints. I don't advise dumping out your interlibrary loan bags or patrons' library bags when they come to the library, simply because you don't know what you're dumping where. I prefer to take things out of the bag in a well-lit room and then look and see if you see any evidence of pests. We keep a Nuvan strip in our drop box. We keep a quarter of a Nuvan strip in each of our vacuum cleaner bags. We keep the sealing totes with or without chemicals to quarantine the items. I recommend heat treating the transit bags and to have the bags inspected by the bedbug dog team. We always make sure she stops by there. Keep a response kit at each circulation desk and designate areas in the library to handle the potentially contaminated items. And remind your staff periodically that the bed bugs, even when you have them under control, which we do, we think, until tomorrow, remind them that they still exist, that once they're in your community, they probably haven't left of their own accord. And probably the saddest question is when they say, when will this be over? And you have to say, it really won't be. I mean, we're confident that we have things under control, but they could be reintroduced into your facility today, tomorrow. So.
And someone says they've asked staff to avoid flipping through the pages of a book too, so they don't send bed bugs flying if the book is infested.
Yes. Yes. Well, one of the things our pest control company told me when we first found some things, and we had run some circulation reports, and I was pulling things from the shelves, and he's like, you need to calm down and be careful when you're pulling things from the shelves, because the bugs don't move just because they like to travel. They usually need a reason. They're coming out for a blood meal. So if someone has returned a book and you've shelved it, it's not going to spread through that whole 3-foot section of shelving. You'll still want to pull that book and 5 or 6 things on either side of it, but they don't travel a whole lot of their own accord. So they don't spread unless there's a reason.
We have another question. How long does the Nuvan strips last?
We usually change them out every couple of months, I think. I can't remember what I was, the vacuum bags, we just put a new one in when we put a new bag in, but the book drop, we try to change them out every few months. Some other considerations. You will probably lose items in your collection due to the heat treatment process or just the damage of the bugs. We found some things where the glue in the binding was starting to run because of the heat process. It just wasn't attractive anymore. Sometimes there's just too much damage. I had one patron who, when the bugs would crawl on the page, he would just smush them with his finger and leave the blood smear. So there's some things I won't ask someone to do, and cleaning the blood, knowing what that was out of a page, we'll just replace the book. Keep in mind that the treatment is expensive, so when you do tell someone they need to have treatment done at their home, you are asking them to put out quite a bit of money to take care of it. Our chemical treatment the first year when we were really hitting everything hard was over $1,000. The box truck to come and heat the chairs for 3 hours was $450. And then I had called when this was all happening because obviously I'm traveling back and forth to my house, and I was curious what heat treatment would cost at my home. And it was almost $3,000 would have been to heat treat my home. Thankfully, I never had to do that, but it's something to consider. This is a huge expense. And there's a lot of prep that's required to heat treat at home. You have to declutter your papers, your boxes. You have to remove any chemicals that might explode when they're exposed to high heat. You have to empty your closet, so you can't have things just sitting around on the floor. There's like a whole sheet, and it's a lot of work. And remember, too, that people with bed bugs, they're likely ashamed, they're embarrassed, they're desperate to begin with, or they don't understand the extent of the problem. With the 2 families I dealt with, they only know what they saw, and until they started looking, they didn't see much. So, because the bed bugs hide. And you'll also have a situation, at least I've heard of one, where they know and they just don't care to take care of it. It's acceptable to live like that. And if you don't react to the bites and you don't see the pests, then you may not realize the extent, and don't worry about it. One other thing that has come up before in conversations is whether to charge a patron for books that are no longer usable. We didn't do that at Thorntown because it was already a stressor asking them to address a problem at home. Yeah, there were some items we lost, but we were able to save most of them, and I don't feel that any of the people affected, this wasn't something they were doing on purpose. This was just something that was happening to the material. So we were pretty forgiving when it came to that.
We have a question here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk more about how you talk to those patrons? It seems like that might be the hardest thing about this.
Yes, it is a very uncomfortable conversation because you want to avoid the finger pointing that can come with it, and there was a little bit of that in both cases. I told them that we had found some items in books that they had returned. I also told them that we had run some circulation reports and seen that there were previous returns that showed evidence of bed bugs. We also had 2 families at once, so we were saying, you're one of 2 families, which kind of helped because I wasn't saying, it's you, but it is you. I asked them to go home and take a look at their living space to see if they saw any evidence of bed bugs. I printed up as much information as I thought they could easily digest, like pictures of them, where to look. I gave them contact information for our pest control company who will do an at-home inspection. And in both of these cases, we limited their circulation. We didn't ban them from the library, which, as I said in retrospect, you wish you could have, and I could have. But I limited their circulations to maybe 2 or 3 items at a time so that we could very carefully look through what they were taking out and what they were bringing back. It was very awkward, but also I had the advantage of the 2 families we were dealing with were very good library patrons and very supportive of the library and people that you would not expect. I mean, if you want to think, they didn't live in squalid conditions. They were active participants in a lot of our programs. We were very friendly with them, and so it was a little easier to have that conversation because I knew that they would have the best interests of the library at heart. I had their best interests at heart. I really wanted them to get the problem taken care of and come back to us. And so when you frame it that way, I think it helps the conversation be a little more productive.
So did you pull them in your office or set a special meeting?
One was I made a phone call because it was a patron who didn't come in every day, and I wanted to make sure he knew right away. And then he came in that day and spoke with me. The other one I did pull aside into they were at a program actually, and I pulled him into a hallway and we had a conversation there. So. Let's see. Was I on this one? Okay. Okay, the protect yourselves. Again, carry the books away from your body. Inspect the books carefully during check-in and check-out. That means slowing down, and it's something we have to remember to do because you get in the groove and forget, oh yeah, they're still out there, but a good practice to have. Handle the contaminated books with gloves and in designated areas. This next one, it says, upon arrival home, place your clothes in the dryer on high for around an hour. That's one way that you can treat your clothing at home or your pillows or whatever. When we were in the thick of this thing, there was one day I was walking through the library and I looked down on my pants. I was wearing light gray pants and I had this little brown spot on my leg and I didn't think much of it. And then later I sat down and I looked and it was a bedbug who'd just been hanging out and I don't know how long he was there. But you can bet that I got home and changed in the garage and and threw my stuff in the dryer. And that was actually a recommendation from our pest control tech at the time, who said his wife won't let him in the house with the clothes that he works in. So he has to change in the garage pretty much every day. And then try to keep your personal items off of the floor. And don't panic. It will be okay. You are in this with a lot of folks. It feels like a lonely place when it happens, but there are many of us dealing with this situation. And our bedbug team, we have Indiana Pest Control that does our chemical treatment. They've also done a little bit of heat treating for us. They do have that capability. And Alert Canine Bedbug Detection Agency, that's Liza and Nan. They come quarterly and inspect our library. And if you want to see a good video of Liza doing her thing, I think there's one on their website. Also, one thing that we did that was very helpful, both when we had cockroaches in 2013 and bed bugs in 14, was to ask our pest control company if they could send somebody to talk with the staff about the situation, and they were happy to do that. He actually spent an hour with us, probably both times, answering all of our questions, calming us down, telling us, you know, how they reproduce, how they spread, how the chemicals that they use work to combat the problem. So it was very helpful. And if hopefully you have a relationship and a good pest control company that's willing to do that for you. And then if there are any other questions, I will be happy to answer them. I also want to mention that this presentation was adapted from one that was originally designed by Andrea Ingmeyer, who is the director of Greensburg Decatur County Public Library, and we worked together to do this one at a SAMS conference a few years ago, and I feel like I always have to give her credit because she put so much work into it. So
I just want to remind everybody to stay signed in until the end so you can get your LEU, but we'll do some questions first. Sherry wants to know if she'll be able to get the presentation later. Yes, I will send this in an email to everyone probably this afternoon, so you will be able to review this webinar. Are there any other questions? We have some people typing.
I have to throw that in there.
Any thoughts on
Diatomaceous earth. I have one of my patrons who had a situation at home used that at home because he was worried about his wife's sensitivity to chemicals, and he tells me it was effective for them, but most pest professionals say it needs to be professional. Of course they say that, but the heat treatment is really the most effective way. But I have looked into it just out of curiosity, but I can't really tell you if it's effective.
All right, we're getting multiple thank yous.
So we are going to go ahead and